Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, today, tougher rules on short-term rentals take hold in BC. We'll talk to Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon up first. And if you list your property on a site like Airbnb, what do these rules mean for you? If you're a renter, will this make renting more affordable and more secure? And as a tourist, how will this affect your summer plans? We're taking your calls this hour. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And you can call us now with our top story this hour. How will the new rules on short-term rentals that take effect today in BC impact you? Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Well, here's what you need to know. As of today, short-term rentals in 60 BC communities will be restricted to principal residences and one other unit on that same property, either a secondary suite or what's called an accessory dwelling unit, things like a laneway house. Some smaller resort communities and tourist destinations are exempt. And some of those communities, though, have actually chosen to opt in, like Bowen Island. Meanwhile, 4 communities have been allowed to opt out. They are West Kelowna, Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, and Puskupi. That may go to show you how divided the province may be on these new rules that start today. Well, joining us now is Ravi Kahlon, BC's Housing Minister. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us, Minister.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
How do you plan to enforce these new rules?
Well, we have launched a new data portal, which launches officially today. This data portal allows us to have local governments upload in the evening every property that they believe is not operating within the rules to this data portal, which directly sends the information to the platforms and the hosts. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is in the middle of the month. We are expecting all the platforms, VRBO, Booking.com, Airbnb, they'll be providing us a complete list of every single property that's listing underneath their platform within the province. We will be taking that information and analyzing it. We have Ministry of Finance has information about who has properties that are investments, who has properties that are principal interests, principal residence. That will be shared with the Ministry of Finance. And then later this year, we'll be launching a provincial-wide registry, which will ensure that everybody has a code within the province, and that is displayed on every single listing on all platforms. So it does go in 3 phases, but we expect enforcement to start today.
With regard to short-term rental companies, I mean, how committed are they to providing that data to you? And does that mean you would then cross-reference that with Finance Ministry details and information?
Correct. The platforms are required in the middle of the month to share listings, the addresses, locations of every single listing that goes on their site. So that is information they're required by law to share with us. And that information will help us if we need to do investigations, if we need to make people aware of rules in their communities. We've also launched, Michelle, a website that anyone that's thinking about doing a short-term rental host can go on, put their information in, and in that site, it'll give them all the local government enforcement rules, if there are any, as well as their requirements for provincially, so that if they do want to go to short-term rentals and they can qualify, they're able to get information about how to do that. So we're trying to provide everybody information on what is legal, what's not, how to go about it. In the end, Michelle, our goal is to get more units back into the market for renters in our communities, and that's what we're trying to do.
And your government found, 19,000 homes in BC are listed on short-term rentals?
Well, there's been a lot of research that's come out showing that there's close to 19,000 homes. There's research showing that it's had a major impact on rents when every year you're losing more and more of our housing stock to short-term rentals, what that impact happens in communities.
And so what number realistically of that 19,000 are you projecting will turn into long-term rentals?
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say for multiple reasons. We are already seeing short-term rentals listings go into long-term rental markets. We are seeing that in communities throughout the province since the legislation passed. And we may see some people say, you know what, I don't want to be in this business anymore. This was an investment. I don't want to do that. And they may sell it. Somebody may get a home ownership opportunity. And
Right.
so even if half those units come back on the market, that's more than the province can build in 1 year with all of the investments we're making in the housing.
But given that some homeowners we've heard from have been renting on short-term rental platforms for what they say are is a good income, they say that they would need to charge thousands of dollars a month to rent out their units if they were to switch to long-term. If they have to, is that really affordable?
Well, the market will decide where the rent is. So if someone had a short-term rental and they want to put it in the market for a long-term rental and they want to see what is available, then they can. I mean, it all depends, Michelle, on the house, the size, the units. It's hard for us to control that. What we're trying to do is ensure that this large stock of housing, which is being bought up by investors for short-term rentals, is available for people who are struggling to find affordable rentals in our communities.
Some property owners, as I'm sure you know, are not happy about this. I just want to hear from someone CBC interviewed. Chad Huberman lives in Vancouver and owns a property in Kelowna.
Well, the biggest thing is now I'm very limited on what I can do with my property. When I purchased the property, I bought it understanding that I was allowed to do short-term rentals. What happened, again, without consultation with the public, is the government made a rule and said no short-term rentals for secondary property owners. So yes, I live in Vancouver, but I have a property that I decided to invest in Kelowna. What I do is I rent for 9 months of the year. I rent it out full-time to UBC students. And the 3 months in the summer, admittedly, to try and make some backup money because I lose a little bit during the winter, I short-term rental.
So what do you say to someone like Chad Huberman who, played by the rules? This is how he himself is trying to get ahead in BC and now feels like the rug has been pulled out from under him.
Well, anyone that invests in real estate, second, third, fourth units across the province, of course, has the ability to do that. What we're saying is that the amount of housing that we're losing that was available to people in our communities that is now being shifted is a significant challenge. And Michelle, we're not the only jurisdiction in North America that's trying to deal with this. Every jurisdiction's trying to deal with it. New York went a very aggressive route, which was completely ban all short-term rentals. What we tried to do was find a balance to ensure that people still had short-term rentals available for them for tourism-related matters, but that we prioritize people in our communities that are struggling. I get emails every day from people, in fact, from Kelowna, saying, hey, our family is struggling. We can't find a place to rent. We may have to leave this province. That is a challenge that we're trying to address with the changes that we're making.
Another homeowner is Becky Taylor, and she says there are going to be unintended consequences.
I understand the need to move away from some short-term rental. I get that we need housing, but I think it was done way too quickly without a lot of thought to the consequences. I mean, tourism being the main one, but we think about traveling nurses, visiting professors, like people who are undergoing cancer treatment, people, there's 101 people who need a month-long rental. The film industry, I'm sure, needs long rentals without it being a full 3 months, and they don't want to stay in a hotel for a month.
So, Minister, are you prepared for those unintended consequences, given that short-term rentals has become, so embedded into how things work, how people find housing for shorter periods of time?
Well, short-term rentals are still available, Michelle, and so if somebody is traveling to a community and they want to stay in a short-term rental, they're still able to do that.
But the goal is to reduce them, right?
The goal is to reduce that so that we can get more housing available for people in the community. But we are seeing year over year huge growth of people buying homes and putting them into short-term rentals, and that's the challenge we're trying to address. And when it comes to traveling nurses, the health authorities have plans. If you look at Interior Health, they already have mechanisms in place. They rent long-term. They rent houses, they rent units long-term so that when a traveling doctor is coming, that they have that available. Interior Health has programs like that across the board. And so, whether it's people coming to Vancouver or people going to another community, both short-term rentals will be available and housing options for longer term are going to be available for communities.
My guest is BC's Minister of Housing for Housing, Ravi Kahlon, and we're going to take your calls right after this. You let us know how the new short-term rental rules will affect you, whether you're a homeowner, a renter, someone making travel plans for the summer. Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Finally, Minister, how will you measure whether this is successful? You said you weren't sure, what the number that you're looking for in terms of units that would be converted to long-term rentals. But what are the metrics by which you plan to measure the success of these rules changes?
Yeah, well, multiple. Our teams are going to be monitoring the shift that we're seeing in the rental market. I can tell you that we are already seeing the impacts. Just met with a woman in Vancouver a few weeks ago who got a home for her family that was a short-term rental, and now she's running a daycare out of it. So we're hearing about these stories throughout the province, Michelle. But also, I would say, is an example from Vancouver. Vancouver has had a principal residence requirement for years. Victoria has had a principal residence requirement for years. The problem is that the cities tried to work with the platforms to enforce the local rules, but they weren't being followed. So City of Vancouver has got close to 1,000 listings that are on short-term rentals right now that have completely disregarded any local government rules. And so they'll be submitting that list today to short-term rental platforms to say, we need these sites, these units off the market. And so, we've tried. This is a call that UBCM made to us. Local government said, we've been trying to figure out how to do this. We're losing so much housing in our community. We need the province to step in at a provincial level to ensure that there's enforcement. And that's what we've done here, Michelle. Now, platforms have a responsibility. If they don't follow the rules of a local government, there's a fine associated to it. If a host continues to say, I don't care, local government, I don't care about your rules, now there's some accountability being put into that as well.
Minister, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. Be safe.
You too. Ravi Kahlon is BC's Housing Minister. Over to you now. How will today's new short-term rental rules in BC affect you? If you're a homeowner, what would they mean for you? If you're a renter, are you thinking this will provide more long-term rental housing stock? Will it make renting more secure, more affordable? And if you are someone making travel plans, what do you think it might mean for where you will stay? 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 and pound 690 on your cell phone. Kate is up first in Vancouver. Hi, Kate.
Hi there. Can you hear me, Michelle?
Yes, we sure can. What do you think of these new rules?
Well, I hope they make a difference. It remains to be seen. I'm not sure it will. As the minister was saying, for years, Vancouver has had the legislation in place for years. And meanwhile, we've seen so many people leave the city because they can't afford it, and it hasn't made a difference. So I'm hearing there's a new portal, a new system, but why haven't these measures been in place years ago? Why are we waiting till, no one can afford Vancouver, and will it actually work? It just sounds like a bureaucratic mess to me. I mean, I'm a homeowner in Vancouver, and we Airbnb our primary residence when we go away, and our licenses have gone up from, I think it was like $100, maybe $200 to $1,000 when I've obeyed all the rules, followed all the legislation, no legal rentals here. But meanwhile, during the years, there's been thousands of illegal ones on the portal. So,
does it give you any comfort to hear him say there's going to be more enforcement now that the platforms are going to be required to cooperate?
I understood there was going to be more enforcement in the past, so I just don't know why they haven't done that in the past, where they haven't asked Airbnb and VRBO to comply. I hope it makes a difference, because I'd like to see more affordable housing in the city. It's devastating to communities and families. But it remains to be seen, is what I'm saying. I don't know if they have better artificial intelligence that can help the workload, because it does sound like quite the job. Or is it going to be another workaround where, other people are going to be able to, copy these codes and copy licenses like they've done so in the past and put fake licenses on their Airbnb page. I'm just wondering what is the workaround for the people who want to do illegal Airbnb listings
to get around it. And Kate, you said you know people who have left Vancouver?
Yes, lots of people. They couldn't afford it. I've seen so many people leave over the years, and this legislation has been in place in Vancouver for years, and nothing has been done, and there was supposed to be enforcement. We didn't see that enforcement, so it's hard to have faith that much will change. I hope it does. I really would like to see some affordable housing. It just sounds like more bureaucracy, in my view, and I hope that that's not the case.
Kate, really good to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's Kate joining us from Vancouver. And Bill is also in Vancouver now. What are your thoughts on the new short-term rental rules, Bill?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that you're coming down on the private people for this. The short-term rentals should be completely allowed. The government should be building houses and managing those houses. Call it council housing. Build the damn things and manage them. A kid could live in the same house from kindergarten all the way through to grade 12 if you had it rent controlled. The family could actually rent it for their whole time. The government created this problem, and they should be looking after this problem. You can't rely on a private person to build a house and then rent it out for next to nothing in order to solve this crisis that they've created.
Okay.
We know it was created.
All right. And Bill, for yourself,
about it.
Pardon me?
We have a stable society. You got to do something about it. You can't be coming down on these short-term rentals. The short-term rentals are the way it is. People come here because it's a tourist area. You're not going to stop that.
Okay.
The situation of people needing houses, you're not going to stop that either.
I imagine, Bill, that the housing minister or the federal government might say we are building homes as well. This is one part of their plan to deal with housing and the housing crisis. But you're saying this particular part of the plan puts the onus on private citizens.
Yeah, entirely. And why should you? How dare you? Like, what do you? Where's your head at? Like most of these ministers, I understand they're trying to get their work done. Something is holding them back from allowing them to just go ahead and build council housing in every city out there and then manage it and rent it out on a rent-controlled basis to the people that need it.
Okay. Bill,
Leave the people in their Airbnbs alone. Like, it's just absolutely stupid. Everything about it is stupid.
Bill, thanks.
You can't expect someone to rent something for next to nothing, being a private citizen.
Thanks so much for the call, Bill. You take care. Richard is next now in Richmond. Hi, Richard.
Hi there. How are you?
I am well, thanks. What are your thoughts on the new short-term rental rules?
Thanks for taking my call. I think I was talking to your producers, and one of the things that is an issue, obviously, first and foremost, is affordability. So it doesn't matter what you put into the market if the bulk of the people I presume is going to be renting, whether it's families or workers, are going to be able to afford it. And I don't think they're going to be able to afford it anyways, because if you look at the wages and you look at the jobs in this province, how many people are making six-figure salaries, right? If it's going to be both
to pay for what market rates would be.
Yes. So that's what the rent is catering to right now, and considering, I mean, global economy in the country and what's happening economically, I mean, you look at even. If you want to look at short-term rentals, look at hotels and motels and inns. They're short-term rentals, and they're making exorbitant amounts of profit and money, and they're always booked up. So if they can't even manage that resource, and it's constantly being filled up, and there's no places to stay and everything else, what makes them think that pushing other people, private citizens or entrepreneurs, out of the market is going to free it up for the average person that probably couldn't afford it in the first place, let alone afford a hotel.
Okay. And for yourself, do you is this something that affects you personally?
It did affect me personally because we did have an asset, actually two assets, and even at the times when it was good, it was difficult to find long-term renters that were reliable and that were of integrity. I mean, one of the things I experienced in my building before we unloaded the asset was there was a lot of people that were renting long-term that just didn't pay. That because of COVID and some of these rules, they just didn't pay their rent. And so there was a lot of evictions all the time, or the quality of the clientele, the renters, was not very good. So there was huge turnover, lots of people that were getting evicted because they just weren't paying their rent. They were just squatting. and also
Is that what you
it
found?
contributed to proliferation of crime. I'm sorry.
Did you find that your tenants weren't paying?
It wasn't. We didn't rent out just for that reason. So we had an asset that we just used, but the majority of the building that did rent out, there was a lot of people that didn't pay.
Okay. Richard, thank you so much. Thanks for calling in. I know you waited a little while. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. That's Richard calling us from Richmond. It's 12:26, 1:26 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today. And we have a lot of emails on this topic as short-term rental rules that limit what kinds of properties can be rented out on short-term rental platforms come into effect today. Joanne writes, the government made the right decision to put these regulations in place. It helps us to use housing the way it is intended. Short-term rentals have impacted the hotel industry. When we think of the number of condominiums built in the past decade, when they were supposed to increase density for residents, seeing them used for short-term was always wrong. Why should residents who purchased a home in a complex have to deal with strangers coming and going from their building? This should never have been allowed. It's like having trespassers in your home. Multi-complex homes were being bought up for investment, not only to create income for the investor, but for tax credits, where people traditionally take advantage if they can claim stuff for personal gain. This needs to take hold. I hope the government doesn't shift. For those working in film, in hydro, and as nurses, they still have options under the new rules. Short-term is impacting home ownership for young people and pushing up the rents. Joanne, thank you very much for that email. bctoday@cbc.ca. And again, today, new short-term rental rules take effect in BC. We've heard of this coming for months, and here it is, May 1st. And this means that short-term rentals will be limited to principal residences. So your principal property and one other unit on that same property, either a secondary suite or a laneway house, something that's called an accessory dwelling unit. Some communities are exempt, but some of those communities actually chose to opt in. And there are also others that have opted out. We want to hear from you. How does this affect you? 1-800-825-5950. Lynn is our next caller now in Victoria. Hi, Lynn.
Oh, hi.
What do you think of these new short-term rental rules?
Okay, well, I don't have a short-term rental, but I do want to say that I think it was a necessary evil to come in, some people think, because if they do nothing, people are upset for all the renters that can't find a place to live. And in this case, they are acting. So they are busy trying to build homes, and at some point, people will probably be able to rent out a short-term rental.
Okay, and you live in Victoria, where we know housing is such a big issue, and
Yes.
your council there actually decided not to seek an extension or a delay in the new rules. What impact have you seen yourself, Lynn?
Well, I have seen a lot of people struggling to find affordable places to live, and it's been very hard for people, middle-income people. So it's been very challenging and hard, and people are on the street, and so I just think that they had to do something, and though I know it'll hurt some people, I think it's necessary for now.
Lynn, thanks so much for the call. Good to hear from you as well.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Lynn in Victoria. Lots more of your calls are coming in on the new short-term rental rules that take effect in BC today. And we'll take more of your calls. Again, our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. What do these new rules mean for you? We'll hear more of your calls coming up after the CBC News Update. And here's Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. A pro-Palestinian protest camp has been set up at UVic. Organizers have posted photos on social media showing about 20 tents on a grass field. A similar demonstration was set up at UBC earlier this week. Protesters there have been stockpiling water, food, and other supplies in preparation for a prolonged stay. After growing calls for the Quesnel mayor to resign, City Council has unanimously censured him. Council moved against Mayor Ron Paul for harming relations with local First Nations. Paul's wife distributed a controversial book about residential schools. The mayor also recommended the book to a regional district chairperson. And the Trans Mountain Pipeline is officially operational today. The project took 4 years and cost about $34 billion. The expansion project boosts the shipping capacity from 300,000 barrels of oil a day to almost 900,000. And now the forecast on the north coast. A mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with a high of 12, highs to 12 and cloudy in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, increasing cloudiness with a high of 12 as well. Highs from 9 to 13 with a mix of sun and cloud in the West Kootenay, cloudy in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, increasing cloudiness with a high of 17. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with highs to 16 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Of course, I saw the jerseys last night in downtown Vancouver. I was at the gym last night and could hear they were playing the game. And, you know, mood going up, going down.
I was playing basketball with the CBC basketball team just down right across from the arena. And yes, I rode home and it was very quiet riding home. Not a lot of happiness in the streets.
Some cheers and then just silence. But I was saying to our colleague George was at the game last night, and he said, you know, there was this kind of electricity in the air, and then of course the bubble kind of burst. But at least, you know, it was a good game to be at because you're there, and if they won, fantastic. I mean, euphoria. But then if not, which they didn't, you know, there's still another chance.
Exactly. We get another, at least one more game, maybe two more games. So sure,
There you go. By the way, I love that CBC has a basketball team.
You know what, though, Michelle? We are really bad. But yes,
Perfect for me then.
We have a nice time.
I'm gonna go watch one night.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
All right. Well, have fun anyway.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. That's Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. This is BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming as well on many platforms on YouTube, CBC Gem, on our website, cbc.ca/BC as well. We've been asking you about your thoughts on the new short-term rental rules. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. If you'd like to email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. Danny is our next caller now on the new short-term rental regulations in BC. Hi, Danny. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought is the short-term regulator is very simple, easy for everyone. Even me, when I traveled to Montreal, the hotel wants $600 for when my son was graduating. And then I found short place, nice apartment, furniture. I rented for $600 for 3 days. And the guy was happy because we didn't make dirt on stuff. I used to have a rental before in my place. I have a house in the bottom. All of them, the renters, they lie. When you tell them, okay, we don't want noises because we have kids. We don't want after 11 at night. They say yes. And then we tell them no partying, no smoking, no drinking.
Sure. And I just want to say, you know, of course, we hear about bad experiences with tenants. You can't generalize as to all tenants, right? And I'm sorry that you had that bad experience.
Plus, if the government really care about the citizen, instead wasting money in the FIFA soccer game for $581 million, they have lands, let them build apartments because let's be realistic. No young guys, they can afford to rent even BC housing rent because they don't get paid enough money. The law for employment, they are low. And even if they graduate from university, it will take them another 5-6 years to establish better income, and they can afford. So they're going to bring 2-3 people to live with them. So it's still the same because I know from my kids, they move from state to province to province so they can afford it.
Really?
My son lives in Toronto. He lives in Toronto. He pays $5,000 for 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
He used to live in Gatineau, Quebec. He was paying the same apartment, $1,400. Now he's going to tell the company that I need to move there and I can work from the laptop. So young people, they can afford it, whatever it is, even if you have long-term renting.
Yeah.
Plus the city every year, I live in South Surrey. Every year when I purchased the house, I was paying $5,000 taxes. Now came to $15,000. Every year they raise. How should I rent it low if I'm going to rent it? How should I rent it low price and I'm paying taxes more? The city.
This is property taxes.
Yeah. So all the stuff. So repairs, they damage. Then before they leave, if you tell them you need an apartment, before they stay 2-3 months, they don't pay you rent.
Okay.
Where is the government? Do they help the landowner? No, they don't care because they care about their salary.
And you are tying, I mean, the property taxes would be a municipal government thing. This is something from the provincial government. But that's fascinating. And your son has had to move several times, you said? Yeah,
because his income the same.
Yeah.
They want him close to his house to work. Now he's paying before $1,400. Now he's paying $5,000 because in Toronto there is nothing cheap.
Sure. Yeah. That's another city as well that's dealing with very high rents. Danny, thank you so much for the call. I know you're in Vancouver, but you said you live in Surrey. But thank you very much for the call.
Yeah.
And really interesting point there, too, about the cost that we now know that has been revealed by the province on hosting World Cup events in 2026. So now the estimate that the province released yesterday was $581 million. So Danny was referring to that in terms of the BC spending, projecting spending on that. It'll be interesting to see as well, an influx of visitors into Vancouver and what that would mean for hotels here, as well as those short-term rentals. So Danny, thanks for bringing that up. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Well, as we heard earlier from BC's Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon, the changes to short-term rental legislation are meant to increase the supply of long-term rentals. It doesn't apply, though. These rules don't apply to resort areas or to municipalities with a population of under 10,000 people. The impact, though, is being felt all over the province, especially where tourism is high. We're asking you, how will these new rules on short-term rentals affect you, whether you are an owner, you're a renter, a tenant, or someone looking to travel over the summer? What will this mean for you? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And our reporter, Chad Pawson, has been covering these changes for us for some time now, and he joins me here in our studio. Hi, Chad.
Hey, Michelle.
So we had a caller earlier actually talk about the rules in Vancouver that have been in place, limiting short-term rentals for years. And she said, we haven't seen the impact. They were hard to enforce. But so what will the new regulations from the province mean for a city like Vancouver?
Yeah, it's a really good question because Vancouver's had short-term rental bylaws in place since 2018.
Yeah.
And in fact, their rules, many of them are far more stringent than the provincial rules that come into effect today. Vancouver considers a short-term rental anything under 30 days, under 30 consecutive days. The province's legislation, as you know, is 90 days.
90 days.
Under the provincial legislation, there can be a rental in a laneway home on your property. But in Vancouver, you cannot rent the laneway home unless you live in it.
It has to be within your...
You have to be living in it. It's that simple in Vancouver. So it's more stringent. But where the Vancouver rules are a bit deficient is that the city has no jurisdiction over the platforms in any way. So they may go out and find platform hosts that aren't abiding by the rules, they may highlight them. They may highlight them to the host, to the platform, say, please take these listings down. But up until today, that was completely voluntary. So that's a big change for Vancouver, where the provincial rules will help them, is that the city can now say, no, this is not abiding by our rules. We need the posting to come down. We need the bookings to be canceled. And now they have the provincial jurisdiction behind them to actually make that happen. It's not voluntary anymore. It will have to happen, or the host platform could face the penalties that we're seeing from the province that's in effect today.
Staffing enforcement has also been an issue in Vancouver, and what the province has said is they're going to bring in this new unit to look at compliance and enforcement. What do we know about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. So some time ago, the minister said that they had hired 4 people for the provincial enforcement unit, with the potential to hire another 12. Now, you spoke to him earlier. I didn't hear that. Maybe he talked about technology. That's when I last spoke to him, it was all technology or technological solutions, but 4 people. Now, Vancouver has, I looked it up, about 8 people total in their enforcement unit. Now, some of those, they're not all inspectors. There's basically one inspector. The majority of them, I think, are looking at posting, using technology to go after it. So anyways, you can see Vancouver, obviously much smaller than the entire province. I think there's about 4,400 active short-term rental listings in Vancouver at the moment. And so that's being enforced by 8 people. The province has 4 people with the potential to hire another 12. So you can see there, that's been one of the outstanding questions is, okay, are you going to start see all this information rolling in and not have enough people to take action in a timely manner?
Yeah, and what the minister said was this sort of 3 steps, that takes us to what you were talking about, the cooperation of the short-term rental platforms, providing numbers and data on those units, and they would cross-reference that with Ministry of Finance information to say, well, is this your first property or your secondary property? And then they go to this database, this provincial database, by the end of it. And who else have you talked to just in terms of whether this will work or not?
I think the biggest thing I'm hearing is that it's all new. It's complicated, like you're saying. There's all these different checks, and there's all these different records and information that's not being shared that has to be shared now. I think the biggest question is, how does it actually work? Like, what if a city notices that there is an illicit listing that they want taken down? So what I've learned from the province is they sent me a bit of a checklist, and it's an interesting process, and it's not really super fast. It's so a municipality can go to a host and a platform saying, we want this one taken down. Then they have about 5 to 90 days before they say it has to be taken down. Then they can send something to the province to say, we've done this and we need your help in taking it down. And then the platforms themselves have to send in monthly these reports of this action they've taken. So you can see that this is quite a monthly, it's not just days, it could be weeks, it could be even months before we learn if the demands is creating an action, which is then being recorded and then being made public so that we can all see that this mechanism is working.
There's a lot of steps to be taken there. Chad, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
CBC reporter Chad Pawson joining me in studio. Oh, we're still taking your calls and your thoughts on the new short-term rental regulations in BC that take effect today. How will you be affected, whether you're a homeowner, a property owner, you list on a platform like Airbnb or VRBO, or you are a tenant, a renter, and you're thinking, will this help in terms of making rent more affordable and make renting more secure and reliable? Maybe you're making plans for the summer. How will this affect you? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Now, we've been talking as well about the impact on tourism and hotels, and Edel is on the line from Vancouver to talk about that. Hi, Edel.
It's Edel, thank you.
Hi, Edel. My apologies.
It's the pronunciation of my name that drives me crazy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Now, you were going to talk about tourism. Yes. Edel.
I'm coming at this from as someone that has worked more than 30 years, mostly in the Vancouver area, but also a little bit in Whistler and in some resort destinations around the province. I've always worked in the kind of luxury hotel side of things. And, obviously when Airbnb and other operators showed up, that was a big disruptor in our in how we operated our hotels and how this was going to affect demand and supply and all of those kind of things. So, everyone needs to expect that in this day and age. It's affected just about every industry out there. And so my only question, and I just haven't heard the minister or anybody really address this yet, is, and I'm hoping maybe with this new registry and that there'll be, better tracking of all of this, is that, are these people, individuals who are benefiting from VRBO and Airbnb and others, are they paying corporate taxes on the revenues that they receive through their operation of their suite as an Airbnb or short-term rental unit? And that's been a big one for the hotels. We pay, not only do we collect an enormous amount of tax revenue with every stay that comes in, and to my knowledge, Airbnb does not charge those same taxes on stays in Vancouver that a hotel has to impose when we have someone arriving. We have destination fees, marketing fees, and accommodation taxes, all of which add on. And I don't believe Airbnb does any of those in any market. I've rented, around the province, and I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And then, so they're not contributing. They're now the biggest operator in the province, bigger than any hotel chain. They have more units, or just Airbnb does. And yet they contribute nothing back. They do not contribute to, say, Tourism Vancouver. They don't consider, to Tourism Victoria, Kelowna, all these small little tourism operations and marketing, groups that try to do all this.
Right.
And they don't give anything back.
Well,
because the tax isn't collected.
Yeah,
and then
that's.
I don't know also if the owners who are benefiting, they should be paying corporate taxes.
And that's the argument we've heard from hotels, right, over the course of the growth of short-term rentals is. Pardon me?
They should be paying, if they're going to be operating suites like hotels, they should be paying the same taxes that we pay. And I genuinely hope the new registry will ensure that there's some follow-up on what revenue went to each unit on an annual basis, and that they are paying corporate taxes back to the municipalities and to help with this.
Okay.
I think that's only fair.
That's an interesting question. We'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the call.
I appreciate taking it. Thank you.
Take care. Alicia is up next in Summerland. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thanks. And what are your thoughts on the new short-term rental rules?
Yeah, so Summerland has had these rules in place for a while, where you have to be a primary living in your unit that you'll be renting out to short-term rentals. We had to spend over $100,000 fireproof safety, changing the direction, having our own air conditioning and heating removed from the other part of the house. It was a very, very expensive process for us. For us just to rent out our house in short-term, or in a long-term rental basis, the clients would still have to pay around $15,000 a month, which people can't afford.
Wow.
When we're talking about these vacation homes to be, available for long-term rentals, they're just not affordable in today's economy. It's not something that people can afford.
15,000.
Yeah, these houses are purchased for vacation houses to be able to, bring your family to and enjoy the Okanagan Valley. And a really good topic that the previous person brought up was, are you paying the taxes? Absolutely. Every Airbnb, they take the PST accommodation, GST accommodation, and then Airbnb also takes a fee. But what I brought up was, yes, there should be a fee as well for the Airbnb people to be paying back to the community.
That's what she was talking about. Yeah, the municipality.
Yep, I agree, because one, we're bringing in tourism, but we're also supporting tourism. We're bringing people into the area where there's nowhere. We have 2 hotels in Summerland. One is booked out completely solid. You can't get a place. The second one is a small, tiny motel. We have a huge wedding venue and winery venue where people now cannot find a place for their guests to stay for their wedding. And they're asking us if they can camp on our property. And then there isn't even campsites. So, because a lot of people can't afford those short-term rentals, so they're living in trailers.
Wow. Alicia,
I don't think it solves the issue.
And just so I can follow you, you were renting out from within your primary residence before?
Yeah, we rent out our top 2 floors, and we live on the bottom floor.
Oh, so under the new rules, you can only do one, I guess, right?
Yeah, you can rent out up to, you can rent out in your house, but we have to live inside of our residence.
Right.
So we had to completely remove the whole bottom part of the residence, make it completely sealed for fire, change everything in it, so that it was one primary unit. And that cost us over $100,000 to do that, just so we could rent out the top floor.
Okay, and you're saying that if you were to put that unit, that home, on the long-term rental market, it's going to be exorbitantly expensive for renters anyway.
Yeah, nobody could afford it anyway. So, and a lot of our friends that do have these vacation rentals in Osoyoos and in Penticton, have these homes, and people can't afford the rent on them anyways.
Okay.
So the issue is having lower income rentals is what we really need in Canada and BC.
And what do you say? It sounds like you do have multiple properties, right?
No, just one property.
Okay, just the one. So you're talking about other the hotels and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the fact that the hotels are booked out and people
I
can't
see.
find a campground to stay in, because a lot of the the situation in British Columbia is those lower income people, they're staying in campgrounds and getting trailers and living in them that way, because BC is a hard place to afford to live in.
BC is a hard place to afford to live in. I think you just came up with a title for the show and for so many. There's got to be a T-shirt. Alicia, thank you so much for the call. Good to hear from you in Summerland.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Jude is our next caller now at Salt Spring Island. Hi, Jude.
Hi, good afternoon, Michelle. So I entirely support efforts to increase housing availability in BC. Obviously, we're in the middle of a housing crisis of epic proportions, and it affects the most vulnerable parts of our population the most. But I do think we need a nuanced approach. And one of your callers mentioned the likelihood of unintended consequences of the new legislation. And I'd like to bring one that I'm very concerned about to attention, which is the lack of availability of short-stay housing for rural residents who need to travel to Vancouver for health care. So I'm currently working with a lung transplant housing support group to actually determine the experiences and costs, out-of-pocket costs for these patients. And by far, the biggest stressor above and beyond undergoing life-saving surgery is securing housing in Vancouver. So organ transplant patients are required to stay proximally to Vancouver General Hospital or St. Paul's for 3 to 6 months post-transplant. They also require a full-time care provider to stay with them. So there's limited opportunities for subsidies and secured accommodations, but the need really outweighs the availability. And I think strongly we need to have the option of allowing homeowners to support, for example, travel and accommodation for patients requiring care.
Wow. Do you know what proportion of patients were using short-term rentals to be able to stay where they will be getting treatment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we're just determining that. We're doing a provincial survey, but we're estimating probably a third of the patients would be relying on short-term rentals because, of course, hotels wouldn't be really suitable when you're staying 3 to 6 months and you have a care provider with you.
And I imagine, to what extent can nonprofits or, the health authorities, that's something that the minister referred to when it comes to healthcare workers, health authorities or hospitals can provide that housing?
Yeah, potentially for healthcare workers, although I think it's still in short supply, but not for patients. No, there's agencies, like the Cancer Agency has the cancer lodges and things, but absolutely the demand outweighs supply by far, and we need a publicly generated solution, I think.
What are you hearing from the Lung Association?
Well, from the Lung Transplant Housing Support Group, this all came about because of the egregiousness of people taking themselves off of the transplant list because they could not afford to pay for elevated very expensive accommodations in Vancouver when they could find them. So that came to the attention.
Hold on, they're taking themselves off the transplant list?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because they need to be in Vancouver, and if you don't have a place to stay, and more importantly, if you can't afford a place to stay, you cannot go forward with your transplant.
Is there not another recourse?
No, there's not right now. Currently, we're working towards that. We believe there should be provincial funding for everybody by medical necessity who has to come to Vancouver, but currently we don't have that in place.
Oh, my goodness. Have you reached out to the Ministry of Health or the provincial government on this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What have they said?
Well, Premier Eby was met with the BC Rural Health Network 2 weeks ago, and he's very concerned, and he's taking it under advisement, and we're trying to provide the data of exactly what people are spending, but it's upwards of $25,000 to come for transplant care in Vancouver. So he's looking at the matter right now.
Jude, thanks so much for raising this. It's certainly something that we will follow Thank you.
Okay,
Glad you
thank you
called.
so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Jude at Salt Spring Island. Let's take one more call here. Sam in North Vancouver. Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for calling.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I have a different perspective. First of all, I was listening to the conversation with one of the previous callers. Airbnb people pay taxes. There is PST, GST, hospitality taxes, Airbnb fee that we pay, and then the guest pay.
Okay.
So there's about 5 separate fees: GST, PST, hospitality, Airbnb fee from my side, and the guest side.
Okay.
So to clear that up.
Thank you.
I'm thinking, this is my main residence, so I'm exempt from the new rules. But I'm thinking, if I were to rent my place and the tenant market is rough, like I put my place up for rent, and the people that came to see was just so different and so difficult that I just rather go back to Airbnb because it's work. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. I just had a situation 2 weeks ago when police had to get involved. I couldn't go to my own house for a whole day because of the people that were staying. So it is very risky. It is
You're talking about short-term rentals is very risky?
Short-term rentals,
Okay.
yes. But to be fair, if I were to rent it, which is ideal for me actually, if the renter doesn't pay, I still have to pay a mortgage because I have a mortgage. There should be different rules for people who have a mortgage or don't have a mortgage. You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
If the renter doesn't pay rent, I still have to pay mortgage.
Okay.
Which is not cheap, right?
Right. I imagine anyone who is renting their place that would theoretically have a mortgage.
There are some people, very rarely, that have paid off houses or they don't have as much mortgage.
I see.
But
I
they
see.
probably have lived here for a
Fair
long
enough.
time. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Can I tell my bank that the renter is not paying so that I don't pay with a high interest?
You still have to keep up with your mortgage payments. Sam, I do have to wrap it there. Thank you very much for the call. I'm sorry that I have to jump in as we are running out of time. So many calls today. Really appreciate all of your input. What a wide range of perspectives as well. Really good to hear. And we'll take your emails still, bctoday@cbc.ca.